This is Shalom World Podcast.
Welcome to Voyage. I am your host, Frances Hogan. Welcome to our sharing on the second half of St. John's Gospel. We're just at the end of chapter 18 and about to go into chapter 19. So we're looking at the dialogue between Pilate and Jesus. And Pilate's reaction to Jesus is truth. What is that? He's living in a world where there are multiple gods and multiple philosophies, and the Roman Empire had multiple different civilizations trying to gel together and all the rest of it. And they were all claiming that they were all right and their religion was right. And this is just another one. Do you know, what is truth? What is that? But the sad thing is that he's standing before the one who is truth. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And my reaction to Pilate at this moment is very sad, because he is a poor little rich man walking away. And because he walks away from the truth, there are going to be terrible consequences. If Pilate had opened up to the truth, then all his reactions during the rest of this drama would have been very, very, very different. Just as he's able to hold out at the very end when he proclaims Jesus King at the end, he could have held out at the beginning as well. So I am reminded of Mark 10:25. It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. I'm also reminded of our Blessed Mother's Magnificat, Luke 1:53, where she says, "He has filled the hungry with good things, but the rich he has sent empty away." Poor Pilate is full of his own importance. He's full of his own authority and all the rest that he's full of. There's no openness in him to actually meet the Lord. It's really, really sad. So we move on to scene 3, which is verses 38 to 40. So once Pilate says, "Truth, what is that?" he goes back out again and he says, "I find no case against him." This is one of 3 statements that he's going to make like that. "But according to a custom of yours, I should release a prisoner at the Passover. Would you like me then to release the King of the Jews?" Now, if he wasn't speaking so cynically to them, the reaction mightn't have been so bad. At this they shouted, "Not this man, but Barabbas." But Barabbas was a brigand. So let's look at that for a moment. We're now going to ask the question, who is the greatest? This question was asked at the Last Supper, where the apostles were discussing this among themselves, not in John's Gospel, but in the Synoptics. And so the consequences of Pilate's decision are going to come back on him much sooner than he thinks. So first of all, he goes front stage out to meet the accusers and he says, "No case. Forget about it. This is all over. You handed me a revolutionary. I am going to show you what a revolutionary actually looks like." His jails were full of revolutionaries, and so he pulls a man out of the jail and puts him standing beside Jesus. The Sanhedrin suddenly realize that the political accusation can't stick in a civil court. It's that simple. They've got to change tactics. Okay. But in this company, at this hour, at this Passover, in this time of darkness, which has come upon Jerusalem, they're all going to stumble. They're all going to do the wrong thing. And we were warned about that in chapter 8, 9, 11, and 12. So at this moment, the darkness in Pilate meets the darkness in the Sanhedrin. And this allows Satan to enter into the situation and take over and bring about the destruction of everybody involved. Now, Pilate's darkness was a life of paganism, a life of immorality, and all the rest of it, and total selfishness and so on. And the darkness in the Sanhedrin was also immorality and hatred and rejection of the truth, and in their case, the specific rejection of the beloved Son of Man. So what Pilate decides to do, and it's a very warped way of thinking, he decides to show them what a real revolutionary looks like. So he puts two men side by side, both of them having the same name, Jesus Barabbas, Jesus, son of the Father. So Barabbas is Barabbas. And Barabbas represents the world of darkness and the cosmos, the unbelieving world, and a true revolutionary against Caesar. And opposite him is the incarnate Son of God, who is love and grace and life and beauty and glory and truth and light. And you have to choose. You would say that, anybody would know what to choose, but they didn't. They chose Barabbas. The very fact that they chose Barabbas shows that they are so determined to kill Jesus that it actually doesn't matter what Pilate does. They're going to force Pilate to kill Jesus. But Pilate has got one little victory. And that little victory is that he has actually made their real motivation come out, because they handed Jesus over initially as a revolutionary. It didn't stick. So now Pilate says, here's a revolutionary, and they chose him over Jesus. So if they thought a revolutionary should be handed over to death, why are they choosing one? Why are they choosing that a real revolutionary and a murderer should be set free? So Pilate knows he has forced them out into the open, but it's going to be a short-lived victory for Pilate. So they have to make a choice. And the choice they're going to make is going to be life or death for humanity. They have to choose between the beloved Son of God or the destroyer. The destroyer, that is Barabbas, actually is an agent of Satan. If they choose him, that's what they get. If they choose the Christ, then they are choosing the kingdom of God. But in one single voice, they shouted for Barabbas. And so I want to remind you of something that you probably don't associate with this situation. I want to bring you back into the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30. And there's a whole big section there called the two ways. In this section from Deuteronomy 30, I'm going to only pick out 2 verses. You can read the rest for yourself. Today, I set before you life and prosperity, Jesus, death and disaster, Barabbas. So then it goes on to explain the consequences of your choice. Choose life then, so that you and your descendants may live in the love of the Lord your God. We've been talking about that throughout the whole of the final discourse. That you would be obeying his voice and clinging to him. That is the way of life of beloved disciples. For in this your life actually consists. And in this way you will have a long life in the land that the Lord your God has given to you. Now, if we had much, much more time to go into this, you'd understand the rest of this drama. Because if they choose life, if they choose Jesus, they can continue to live in what we call the promised land. But their only right to live in the promised land was a people chosen by God, choosing God, living in his covenant, obeying his will. That was their only reason how they could stay. We're going to see, as a result of the decisions they make, they're going to be turfed out of the land. So choosing life or choosing death is actually what is in front of them. So just as Pilate had an opportunity to choose when he was standing privately in front of Jesus, so the Sanhedrin and the whole nation are now given the choice to choose or not. it's really sad what's going on. When you go back to the infancy of Jesus in Luke's Gospel, you find that the prophet Simeon told Jesus' mother that this child was going to bring about the rise and the fall of many in Israel. And as a result, the secret thoughts of many hearts would be revealed. Well, we're already into that process of the secret thoughts of everybody involved in the Passion of Christ being revealed. John wants you to remember, if you go back to chapter 10 and verses 8, 9 and 10, that the Good Shepherd was compared to robbers and bandits. He's the one who gives his life for his sheep, and they're the ones who break in and destroy. So I told you that the way John presents the Passion of Jesus actually is a revision of his whole gospel. So when they reject Jesus in favor of the realm of below, the realm of darkness and destruction is going to actually come to this nation 40 years later and bring about terrible destruction. And the war that broke out against Rome in 65 AD, it continued on until the Romans came in and absolutely obliterated this people. We're told that 1 million people died defending Jerusalem stone by stone, that they actually sacrificed priests on the altar, which was an abomination of desolation, that the survivors were actually all exiled to the nations of the world. So there are terrible consequences to the decisions they're actually taking. And I'm telling you this because I have repeated several times John 11 verses 49 to 50, where Caiaphas had said, if we don't kill this man, the Romans will come in and destroy our nation. They killed the man and the Romans did come in and destroy their nation. Caiaphas was not a wise man. The Jewish leaders at this moment gain a huge victory over Pilate in this desperate political struggle that's going on, because they now force Pilate to release a man who is known publicly to be a revolutionary. And when Caesar in Rome gets to know that a revolutionary fighting against Caesar has been released from jail, Pilate is in real trouble. And when they force him later on to kill an innocent man, it's even more guaranteed that Pilate will lose his job. And so Pilate's fall from power actually begins at this moment, when he actually gives in to them. He should have said, this cannot be done. But Pilate doesn't do that. He has refused to listen to the voice of Jesus, and almost immediately he is compelled to listen to the voice of the Jewish leaders. And so he himself now becomes a pawn in this terrifying political game. And as a result of this, because this man has no wisdom and he appears to have no understanding, he is going to make terrible decisions which will have long-lasting consequences for all concerned. It really is extraordinary what's going on. So let's come into chapter 19 and we come to the next scene. We're told that Pilate then had Jesus taken away and scourged. But after this, the soldiers twisted some thorns into a crown and put it on his head and dressed him in a purple robe. Then they kept coming up to him and saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they slapped his face. Okay, we are now into chapter 19. And the whole topic of chapter 19 is that the Son of Man is lifted up on the cross. And here at the very beginning, the verses I've just read for you, we have scene 4, and that's the coronation of the king. In scene 3, it was the proclamation that Jesus was the king, and here we have the coronation. So the political accusation against Jesus fades into the background, and now the real accusation against him has got to come forward. So Pilate realizes that he can't win the struggle with the Sanhedrin, And so the Sanhedrin actually resort to political blackmail, which is really horrible, because they are going to force Pilate to kill Jesus against Pilate's better judgment. Now that Pilate has discovered that the Jewish Sanhedrin have found a way to destroy him, he is going to be as cruel as he can possibly be towards them. And of course, as I said before, when Rome hears about these events, Pilate himself is going to fall from power absolutely. So all of a sudden, Pilate realizes that somebody is going to die today. And that somebody is either going to be himself, because the Jewish Sanhedrin will go for him, or it'll be Jesus. And that's where he moves towards killing Jesus. But he still doesn't want to let them see that he has lost power. He realizes that the Jews are demanding blood. So he decides in his own warped way of thinking that he will give them blood, but he won't give them the life. And so he orders Jesus to be scourged. Well, this is such a warped way of thinking. It's unbelievable. And the only thing he succeeded in doing, in having Jesus scourged, was to increase his pain and suffering beyond measure. He didn't succeed in anything else. So this is completely sick way of thinking. And the result of this punishment that Pilate orders for a man he knows he has no case against, a man he knows is completely innocent, is described in Isaiah chapter 52, verse 14. The crowds were appalled on seeing him. So disfigured did he look that he seemed no longer human. Now, we have to look at this. This appalling punishment was given to an innocent man that Pilate is still going to release. Pilate still wants to release him. But at the end of this punishment that's going to be given to Jesus, Jesus would die anyway. It's absolutely incredible. And so if you look at this in terms of the Passover lamb, the Passover lamb, if you understand the process of offering this lamb, out of compassion for the animal, they killed the animal humanely, and then they absolutely flogged him and fleeced him afterwards. And that flogging was the punishment for the sins of the people. Here we have the living Lamb of God literally fleeced. And he is scourged from head to foot, front and back, so that no part of that very sensitive body was left without wounds. It is so appalling that many a man died raving mad under the scourge, or they would die of heart attacks and shock and all kinds. And yet this is just the beginning for Jesus. And the most incredible part of it all is that Jesus took this punishment in silence, in peace, even in majesty. And his whole person is so majestic, so wonderful, that I don't know how the soldiers continued. I just don't know how they did it. While they were literally taking the flesh off his body, he was in complete silence. And this is the punishment that Jesus had to take to cure us of all our immorality, of all our sexual immorality, and of everything that degrades human beings. And it was actually part of the Passover that the lamb had to be flogged in order to make reparation for the sins of the people. But if Pilate thinks that this is going to elicit pity from the Jewish Sanhedrin, his thinking is very, very wrong. When they see Jesus coming from this scourging and from the crowning, they are going to move in for the kill. It is really frightening to see human beings degrading themselves so completely. Thank you for watching. Slán agus Bannacht Dé live. Goodbye. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today. We'd like to hear what you thought of today's session. Share your feedback with us at podcast@shalomworld.org. You can motivate and support us today. shalomworld.org/donate. Visit shalomworld.org for more information about Shalom World Podcasts. To get the latest updates, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Shalom World Podcasts. Shalom World Podcasts is now available on all online platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others.